So I understand you want to talk to us a little bit about a wonderful form of government.
Oh, yes.
And we'd like to hear a little bit about your campaign, how it's going, and then ask a few questions.
Okay.
So, take it away.
All right. The campaign is going well. We're doing some walking and talking and listening. We've also had surveys come back from mailings, and they've all said the same thing. They're very, very worried about the increased level of government, and not just in size, but the intrusion in our lives. So that is a big, big thing for people, and it resonates throughout every economic level. Everyone, you know, you can't get away from it. It's just very, very much in the forefront, because as we know, government itself has grown 15% compared to 1% of the private sector. And that's unsustainable for us as, you know, independent individuals who are supposed to be in a free market business climate, and we're not. So I want to begin a little bit by giving one of my favorite quotes, which really is the basis of what's happening to us right now, and what I'm going to read to you a little bit. It's, "A citizen is vulnerable to government oppression when laws are written in such a way and volume that they cannot be consumed by the governed. Right now, we have government federal regulations in 201 volumes that span 19 feet of shelf space sitting. And you know what? If you don't know those regulations, that's no defense. And if you break one of those regulations, which could be just in business, something you didn't know, it could be an EPA regulation, who knows, but you can do more time in a federal prison than a terrorist. Did you know that? Are you aware of that? That your rights have been so violated?
Definitely more time than politicians.
Definitely. The principles of the party, of the Republican Party, I'm sure you're all very aware of: protect the rights of the individual, protect free enterprise system, reduce government to the lowest practical level, and then endorse and practice fiscal responsibility. You think that these just aren't the principles of the Republican Party. You think that this should be posted on every refrigerator in America. These are good principles. Why aren't they posted on our state Republican website? Where are they? Why haven't we demanded that these be posted, so when people come to find out who we are and what we represent, they can see this and they can say, you know what, that sounds pretty good. I think I'm a Republican. I think I can live like this. Makes sense to me. Well, we better start not only wondering why we don't have our principles of the party, you know, on our state website, but where's our Constitution? The greatest 5,000 words ever written. And they're nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be found in our schools. Nowhere to be found. There, is it there? That's right. But, you know, yeah, I have some back there too. We have the Declaration of Independence, which gives us the reasons why we are a country. We have our Constitution that gives us the outline of liberty. And we have the Federalist Papers, which give us what?
The unpacking of the
intent.
The intent.
Yeah, the intent. All of these should be kept right next to the Bible or in the most important books in your home, and should be read daily, daily, as they were intended to be read. and follow. How many of you are familiar with the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto? Okay. Well, I came across on criminalgovernment.com the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. And could this be happening in America? And if so, how? So we're going to just go through this real quick, and we're going to see, you know, how. I know you all expect what I'm going to tell you when I get into the Senate, that I'm there to protect your rights. How can you protect something that you don't have? Okay? It's pretty simple. We have to get those rights back. We have to become aware of what we've lost. And in 10 planks here, we can see that. So I'm going to read through them real quick so we can get through and have everybody out of here by 9 o'clock. Our elected representatives have passed laws implementing these anti-freedom concepts. The communists have achieved a de facto federal socialist government in America. In 1848, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels wrote the book outlining a political ideology titled The Communist Manifesto. Marxism's basic theme is that the exploited working class of the capitalistic society will suffer from alienation and will rise up against the middle class and overthrow the system of capitalism. After a brief period of rule by the dictatorship of the exploited working class of the capitalistic society, the classless society of communism will emerge. In his manifesto, Marx described the following 10 steps as necessary steps to be taken to destroy a free enterprise society. Notice how many of these conditions, foreign to the principles that America was founded upon, that great little Constitution, have now, in 1997, been realized by the concerted efforts of socialist activists. Remember, government interference in your daily life and business is intrusion and deprivation of our liberties. It can't be more clear. We'll go through these 10, and they do give a little bit of an idea of what has happened. They explain, and they'll show you exactly how we have been taken for granted and how we have lost our rights. The first plank, abolition of property and land and the application of all rents of land to public purposes. Zoning, model ordinances proposed by Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover, widely adopted. Supreme Court ruled zoning to be constitutional in 1921. Private owners of property required to get permission from government relative to the use of their property. Federally owned lands are leased for grazing, mining, timber usages, the fees being paid into the U.S. Treasury. Second plank, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Check. Corporate Tax Act of 1909. The 16th Amendment, allegedly ratified in 1913. The Revenue Act of 1913, Section 2, Income Tax. These laws have been purposely misapplied against American citizens to this day. Third plank, abolition of all rights of inheritance. Partially accomplished by enactment of various state and federal estate tax laws taxing the privilege of transferring property after death and gift before death. Fourth plank, confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. The confiscation of property and persecution of those critical rebels of government policies and actions frequently accomplished by prosecuting them in a courtroom drama on charges of violations of non-existing administrative or regulatory laws. Those 19 feet, 201 volumes. getting a little too close to home. Fifth plank, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. The Federal Reserve Bank, 1913, the system of privately owned Federal Reserve Banks, which maintain a monopoly on the valueless debt money in circulation. Sixth plank, centralization of the means of communications and transportation in the hands of the state. Federal Radio Commission, 1927, Federal Communications Commission of 1934, Air Commerce Act of 1926, Civil Aeronautics Act of 1938, Federal Aviation Agency, 1958, becoming part of the Department of Transportation in 1966, Federal Highway Act of 1916, federal funds made available to states for highway construction, Interstate Highway System of 1944, funding began in 1956, Interstate Commerce Commission, given authority by Congress to regulate trucking and carriers on inland waterways, 1935 to 1940. Department of Transportation, 1966. That has really been overdone here. We need to look at how much of our money is misappropriated.
I forgot CISPA and
Oh yeah, there's many, many more. But look at how many of these government agencies exist and how many different ways our money, which goes to facilitate those agencies, can be misappropriated. Look at FASTER. Look at what has happened in our own state and how they went around Tabor by creating an enterprise system for our roads and bridges. That's how they got around Tabor. And it was an illegal way to do it, and they're being sued right now. Seventh plank, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, which is the bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvements of the soil, generally in accordance with the common plan. Department of Agriculture in 1862. Agriculture Adjustment Act of 1933. Farmers will receive government aid if and only if they relinquish control of farming activities. Tennessee Valley Authority in 1933 with the Hoover Dam completed in 1936. Okay, look at the EPA and what they're doing to restrict water usage, even our water storage programs that we want here in northern Colorado, which is in essence the lifeline to our success and growth. Why haven't we had, even though those permits have been in for Glade-Gaelton reservoirs for 10 and 11 years, but not signed off on? Are you aware that over 60,000 acres of agricultural land will not be tilled if we do not get that water? That's kind of controlling, you know. Look at what's happening here already, and it is a lot to do with the EPA. Eighth plank, equal liability of all to labor. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. First, labor unions, known as federations, appeared in 1820. National Labor Union established 1866. American Federation of Labor established in 1886. And Interstate Commerce Act of 1887 placed railways under federal regulation. Department of Labor, 1913. Labor Management, negotiations sanctioned under Railway Labor Act of 1926. Civil Works Administration in 1933, National Labor Relations Act of 1935. That stated purpose to free interstate commerce from disruptive strikes by eliminating The cause of the strike. Works Progress Administration, established in 1935. Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 mandated 40-hour work week and time and a half for overtime, set minimum wage scale. Civil Rights Act of 1964, effectively the equal liability of all to labor. The ninth plank, combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of population over the country. Food processing companies with the cooperation of the Farmers Home Administration foreclosures. They're buying up farms and creating conglomerates in the farming industry. Anybody familiar with ConAgra and all those others? And you know, one of the things that you have to look at that is very important is going back to another plank, the death tax. And you cannot inherit property from someone in your family who had died. When you see the value of a farm or a ranch, and those owners die, those children are unable to pay the taxes, the death tax, to the federal government to keep those properties, so they're lost. And this is how conglomerates have come about and been able to purchase that land and take it away from the individuals. This 10th plank is a good one. Free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form. Combination of education with industrial production. Gradual shift from private education to publicly funded began in northern states early 1800s. In 1887, federal money unconstitutionally began funding specialized education. Smith and Lieber Act of 1914, Vocational Education, Smith-Hughes Act of 1917, and other relief acts of the 1930s. Federal School Lunch Program of 1935, National School Lunch Act of 1946, National Defense Education Act of 1958, a reaction to Russia's Sputnik satellite demonstration, provided grants to education specialties. Federal school aid law passed in 1965 greatly enlarged the federal role in education, Head Start programs, textbooks, and library books. Now, there's one thing about these 10 planks that is missing, that is going to guarantee for us as citizens in the Constitution our liberties and freedoms. What is it? No, what is it? What is it that hasn't been addressed in these 10 planks that I think is the most important Constitution amendment that is going to guarantee us our liberties, and by golly, they are not going to be taken. Second Amendment, that's right. I could not agree more. You take away our Second Amendment rights, which are absolute, by the way, and we will be no longer the greatest nation in the history of the world.
All I'm going to do is convince us to turn them in like they did in England.
Well, they aren't going to do that. They are not going to do that. But I wanted to go over and let you know how we have been robbed so far, so quietly, by our legislators, under the guise of they know what's best for us. And we have let them, we've allowed them to do this. I'm not going to go to the state Senate to make laws and pass a bunch of more bills, but I would like to really repeal a lot and cut back to some common sense and liberties, and to be able to have what our forefathers fought so valiantly for, and that's for us. And we need to get our Constitution and the Federalist Papers and our Declaration of Independence back into every school curriculum in the country.
Every year.
Every year those kids are in school, they should be able to recite that as well as their ABCs. So that pretty much ends up where we are, and if there's any questions?
Would you say that cultural diversification has brought about a lot of the problems that we're seeing today? And when I'm talking about cultural diversification, I'm talking about accepting outside cultures and not so much focusing on Western civilization and Western culture. Because I've seen, whenever I was going to college, how the teachers are always teaching you to be diverse in your cultural understandings and whatnot, and to embrace other cultures rather than embracing our culture, which is our Constitution, and pledge allegiance before we our class go in session. And do you think that would have any kind of effect on laws we're seeing today?
Yep.
But there's, at the same time though, there's this boundary between respecting others' cultures and hearing other and forcing them upon us.
One of the things that has come across in watching my children go through the educational system, they were all too ready to teach about other people and not about us. Because they taught about, we were an embarrassment to all the things we had done wrong. The revisionist history, that's what they have taught. And that's why we have lost our sense of value in ourselves. And certainly you can learn about other cultures. I went down to Mexico for a rather interesting study from the university, and I came back kissing the ground. I mean, as soon as I landed on the airport, I was like, oh, I love this country. And I was in the rural areas of Mexico, and it was very rough and very different. We lived like they live, and the cultures. But I'll tell you, you can learn anything about anybody you want, but as long as you're also taught correctly why we are who we are, and we are able to maintain the pride. Yeah, we can't be proud of who we are.
High school kids in California will come wearing like American shirt, American flag shirt, at home because it's appending to the more citizens. And it's just like, wait a second, this is America. We need to be proud of who we are.
And then recently there was a kindergarten class in New York that compared to sing God Bless America, but instead they had to sing Justin Bieber's Baby song as the God Bless America song.
Yeah, there's all sorts of little things coming up like that, which is ridiculous. If we have children in kindergarten who can text and are more tech savvy than, a lot of adults, they can sing. They aren't going to be. Look at the time. I mean, we did a lot of things we don't do anymore, and that's why we're losing who we are.
Earlier you mentioned the important books to have, and you mentioned that everyone should have a Bible. So which raised the question in my mind, where do you think religion ends and government begins? Where is that line where you're crossing the two?
Our founding fathers knew that for the Constitution to succeed, we had to be a moral society. And I think we have lost that because as we are coming, if it feels good, do it. I don't think that's basically how I raise my kids, and if it feels good and they do it, yeah, I'm going to let them feel something else. And it's not going to feel so good. There has to be perimeters of civilization that you abide by, which garners respect for every human being. And we aren't animals. We are human beings. We rise above certain manners of,
Behavior.
yeah, behavior. I mean,
So, maybe one direct question, would you support a bill that required all public schools to teach the Ten Commandments?
we already do teach, even without, it's funny because the Ten
I
Commandments,
mean, literally, I understand principles are taught, but I mean, literally teaching the Ten Commandments as a required part of the public education curriculum.
I think it would be a bad idea because, but we're teaching them through law enforcement already. I mean, you can't kill somebody, you can't lie to somebody or cheat and steal from them. I mean, in so many ways, it's really funny because we want to separate, and people are always saying, oh, well, we have to keep this religion out, when actually, religion is in everything we do. Our law enforcement, well, they should be peace officers, but they're not. They operate on the Ten Commandments. We teach our children, don't lie to me, don't steal from me, don't cheat on your wife or don't cheat on your husband. But we don't say, okay, this commandment so-and-so teaches you this, and we don't label it as that, we just live by it, like we do our liberties in the Constitution, are we? And so, but should we teach it as, the Ten Commandments? I don't care what we teach it as, but we better start teaching something.
So, there are, the counter question then is, do you think it's okay for teachers to teach about Islam and other religions?
Islam is a counter-government, not just a counter-culture. And it goes against our government. It can be delved into, I believe, as an educational, this is the difference between our, and it's just as well as you understand why you're an American. I think, we can't be kept in the dark about who Islam is. We need to educate truly who Islam is. And we have to educate truly who Americans are and know the difference and know why we are American. Why, history, not revisionist history, but history teaches us, how all of these governments evolved and how they came into power and how they lost power. Look at the Roman Empire. Look at how our forefathers used history to write the Constitution, and they used the Bible. They were more versed in the Bible than any other book. And I do believe that it's important to keep that in mind. And as much as, it's sad, because it's not God who has done wrong against himself. It is people who have used the word of God wrongly and used it to persuade people to do wrong or used it for their benefit. People do amazing things, but then they blame it on God. God's just God. He's not down there making you do bad things. But people have the ability to do bad things on their own, and they do. And the Bible keeps us in order, but it's, we have free choice and free will. We just have to keep it monitored because, as we all know, we're subject to great sin. It's just our nature. But I think we need to be kept in a parameter, and the Bible, to me, is the best way to do it.
What's your position on this mosque being built here, the largest mosque in probably northern Colorado, right over here on CSU campus?
That's a toughie. We have had many discussions on this, and it does really depend on who their leader is, where they come from.
Well, you stated it was counter-government. Islam religion is counter-government, so, that's a very powerful statement.
It is. Well, it's true.
So, I'd just be curious to see what your position. Do you think they should be building that mosque there? like here on the CSU?
As the largest.
Well, it's probably the largest
You know,
mosque
that-
in
Yeah, I think
North
it's very
Dakota.
interesting. I have not made a definite position on that at this time. I really have to say I don't know a lot about it. I've had some discussions about it with Muslims who have now come into Christianity, and their position is definitely no. It's not just a kind of no, it's a big no.
Does the university have a chapel or a church? Does the university also have a church?
Yeah, they have churches. I don't know how much it's involved with or as part of the university. Do you know? Yeah, I don't know. I know they have.
They do have chapels on the campus. Yeah, they even have a little meditation place on the campus. Part of the university.
It would be interesting to find out if that mosque, or how that mosque was related to Muslim kids being allowed to pray in public schools in Fort Collins and having special prayer groups that were set up for them.
Well, this is something, there's a lot behind it that I just have to tell you I do not know and have not delved into, but there are a lot of important questions that people want answers to. And, those should be definitely.
Okay, so my big thing is the Second Amendment. So if we're both elected and I introduce legislation for constitutional carry, are you focused on those?
Wow.
I think, yes, any gun bill that comes through for absolute gun rights are ones I will sponsor, co-sponsor, I will advocate for.
When you say absolute, you include felons, rights to felons?
But for,
For law-abiding citizens.
the law citizens, definitely.
But if you're over that, number one, you were already talking about the 19 feet of laws that are in place right now. Any federal law violation is a felony. So if you're convicted of any of those federal law violations, you are automatically a felon. Therefore, how does that impact the right to own or carry firearms? One. And number two, does any gun bill, like you just said, include the right for private citizens to own and have, with no government monitoring, fully automatic weapons,
Yes,
military type weapons, that sort of thing?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's 16.
Because bottom line, guns don't kill people, people use guns to kill people. I mean, it's just like spoons don't make you fat. Eating too much food makes you
And they
fat.
run you down.
So it's the common sense of it all. I think any law-abiding citizen, should be able to own whatever firearm they choose.
Your limitation of firearms to guns bothers me. Because, first of all, guns can get guns if they want them. Laws
Yes, they
are not going to help any at all. If they get guns and they do something bad with them, you can prosecute them on the basis of what they did. You don't have, having extra laws saying that they can't have guns and therefore if they acquire guns, they're automatically violating law. It's not going to do any good.
Well, definitely there are problems with the law. I'm not going to refute that at all. We have so many laws written poorly, and we're suffering the consequences. And when you look at the regulations that are passed and the laws as you're talking about, It is basically ending up under one simple statement. That's the over-criminalization of America. That's what's happening under the laws that are being presented federally and state, and even locally, with ordinances that they pass, taking away, these city ordinances taking away your property rights. Look at what they do on conservation easements, taking away your property rights. I mean, all under the guise of environmental, good and this and that. What you say is so true. And I'm going to tell you, I have no perfect law written at this time, but I know they need to be addressed. And that's where we start, is the awareness in knowing that so much of what is statute and on the book and in federal regulations is wrong, is bad. We need to get judges that will look at things and be able to, instead of, listen, we're going to go for a while. What we have a real problem with right now are judges taking and making case law, and it then puts our Constitution further back in the archives. And it's not ever referred to because we have case law. What happens in law school? Do they learn Constitution law, or do they learn case law? They learn case law. Case law that is made by judges who have not a clue of the Constitution and why it was written, and under the circumstances where it was so important. It's these case laws, that are criminals.
But there's something to be said which I encourage. If you do not support allowing felons to have guns, so that is no stand better.
Well, at this point, I believe that there are a lot of people who could.
It's like a non-violent.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody
There's a lot of those laws that would, felonies that. What I'm saying is would have to be revisited and rewritten and looked at, because not every felon should be, taken away his gun rights. I don't believe that. But I believe violent criminals, definitely. We need to look at those laws written for those individual felons, because there are like a list of felons. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Do they all deserve to lose their gun rights? No. And voting rights, no. And these laws need to be done away with. They need to go away.
There's a book out there that describes how we all probably commit felonies. Three
felonies a day,
Yeah.
some, yeah.
So,
And it is true.
It becomes Japanese law. It's just whoever you don't want to have a gun, you don't want to vote, you take it to the streets.
But I do understand now, what you mean. And yes, I'm talking about violent felons, but not every felon. We need to revisit those laws.
Okay, let's thank Vicki for her time.